If Karl Marx were alive today, what kind of films would he watch? And more importantly, recommend? You might be surprised to find that many modern movies reflect his ideas about class struggle, capitalism, alienation, and revolution. In this video, we'll explore 7 popular films that Marx himself would likely applaud, not just as entertainment, but as powerful critiques of the systems that shape our lives. Let's dive in. We'll start with Parasite, the Korean masterpiece by Bong Joon-ho that shocked the world. This isn't just a thriller about a poor family infiltrating a rich household. Marx would see this film as a perfect demonstration of what he called class consciousness, the moment when people realize their position in the social hierarchy isn't natural or deserved. Watch how the Kim family moves through the Park family's house. Every staircase they climb or descend represents a shift in social class. The basement where they live floods with sewage while the Parks enjoy their elevated garden. This isn't subtle symbolism. It's Marx's theory of class structure made visible. The wealthy literally live above the poor, both physically and metaphorically. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Parks aren't evil villains twirling mustaches. They're just ordinary people who benefit from a system they never question. Marx called this false consciousness, when people can't see how the system actually works because they're trapped inside it. The Parks genuinely believe they deserve their wealth, just like the Kims initially believe they deserve their poverty. Now let's talk about Joker from 2019, starring Joaquin Phoenix. Arthur Fleck's transformation into the Joker isn't just a superhero origin story. It's Marx's prediction about what happens when capitalism pushes people too far. Marx wrote about how economic systems create the conditions for their own destruction, and Arthur embodies this perfectly. Think about Arthur's journey. He's a minimum wage worker with mental health issues in a society that's cutting social services. He's literally a product of systemic neglect. When he finally snaps, he doesn't just hurt individuals. He becomes a symbol that inspires mass uprising. Marx would recognize this pattern immediately. The system creates its own gravediggers. The movie shows us something Marx understood centuries ago. Violence isn't the cause of social problems. It's the symptom. When people are denied dignity, healthcare, and economic opportunity, they eventually fight back. The Joker's revolution isn't random chaos. It's the inevitable result of inequality pushed to its breaking point. Fight Club from 1999 takes us deeper into Marx's concept of alienation. The unnamed narrator works in a meaningless corporate job, lives in a sterile apartment filled with IKEA furniture, and feels completely disconnected from his own life. This is textbook Marxist alienation, when work becomes so meaningless that people lose touch with their humanity. But here's the brilliant part. Tyler Durden represents the narrator's attempt to reconnect with authentic experience through violence and destruction. Marx believed that capitalism alienates workers from their labor, their products, their fellow workers, and ultimately themselves. The fight clubs become spaces where men try to feel real again, even if it's through pain. The movie's critique of consumerism would make Marx smile. "You are not your job, you're not how much money you have in the bank," Tyler says. This directly echoes Marx's warning that capitalism reduces human beings to nothing more than their economic function. We define ourselves by what we own rather than who we are.
Things you own end up owning you.
Snowpiercer, another Bong Joon-ho masterpiece from 2013, presents Marx's class struggle theory as a literal train journey. The poor live in the tail sections, eating protein bars made from insects, while the elite enjoy sushi in the front cars. But this isn't just science fiction. It's a perfect metaphor for how our society actually works. Marx would love how the film shows that revolution isn't just about changing who's in charge, it's about destroying the system entirely. Curtis fights his way forward through each car, thinking he wants to reach the engine and take control. But the real revelation comes when he discovers that the whole train system depends on maintaining artificial scarcity and conflict. The engine requires child labor to function. The revolutions are planned and controlled to maintain population levels. Marx predicted exactly this, that capitalism needs unemployment, poverty, and conflict to survive. The train keeps moving because the system benefits from inequality, not despite it. The Big Short from 2015 would fascinate Marx because it demonstrates his theory about capitalism's internal contradictions. Marx argued that capitalism contains the seeds of its own destruction, that the system's drive for profit inevitably leads to crises that threaten the system itself. The 2008 financial crisis wasn't caused by external enemies or natural disasters. It was caused by the system working exactly as designed. Banks maximizing profits by selling mortgages to people who couldn't afford them, then betting against those same mortgages. Marx called this tendency of the rate of profit to fall. Capitalism's need for endless growth eventually destroys the foundation it depends on. Watch how the movie shows ordinary people losing their homes while the architects of the crisis get bailouts. This perfectly illustrates what Marx meant when he wrote that capitalism socializes losses while privatizing gains. The system protects wealth while ordinary people pay the price for its failures. Nomadland from 2020 brings Marx's ideas into the present moment. Fern's life in a van after the 2008 recession represents what Marx would recognize as the creation of a reserve army of labor, people who survive on temporary, precarious work with no security or benefits. Amazon's Camper Force program, featured in the film, is pure Marxist nightmare fuel. Older Americans living in vehicles, traveling from warehouse to warehouse for seasonal work with no health care or retirement security. Marx wrote about how capitalism turns workers into mere appendages of machines, and Fern's journey through Amazon fulfillment centers makes this literally visible. But here's what Marx would find most significant: Fern's search for community and meaning in a system designed to isolate and exploit her. Her connections with other nomads represent attempts to build solidarity outside the traditional economic system. Marx believed that capitalism's greatest weakness was its tendency to bring workers together, creating the conditions for collective action. Finally, V for Vendetta from 2005 shows us Marx's vision of revolutionary consciousness in action. V isn't just fighting against a totalitarian government. He's fighting against a system that uses fear and division to maintain control. Marx understood that political oppression and economic exploitation are two sides of the same coin. The movie's famous line, "People should not be afraid of their governments, governments should be afraid of their people," echoes Marx's belief that real power belongs to the working class, not the ruling elite. V's revolution succeeds not through individual heroism, but by awakening collective consciousness among ordinary people. Each film shows us characters who start by accepting their place in the hierarchy, then gradually realize they have the power to change everything. We live in a system that benefits the few while exploiting the many. We work jobs that feel meaningless while struggling to afford basic necessities. We're told this is natural and inevitable, but these films show us it's neither. Thanks for watching.